Hi, welcome back to the channel. I'm Michelle, and today I want to talk about the books I've been reading for January and the first couple weeks of February. And it's a mix of nonfiction, it's a mix of young adult, it's a mix of kids' books. So for the books I don't have, because I usually get my books from the library and obviously they're due at certain points, I will just put a picture up on the screen for you to see. But let's get into it. So the first book I read, and this was part of our book club, the book club I do at the library, and this is adults who read kids books, young adult, middle grade type books, and it was Amari and the Night Brothers. This was a really good book, and I was kind of surprised I liked it so much. When I started reading it, it kind of gave me like Harry Potter vibes, because Amari is learning that she has supernatural abilities. She's going into this world and learning about all the supernatural. And I really like how this book took it in a different direction. So Amari grew up in a poor neighborhood. She's Black, so her character development, I think, is a lot more, meaningful, and it kind of overarcs the entire thing of her going into this magical world and being treated differently, but she's always been treated differently from where she grew up, the person she is, the color of her skin. So I like the theme that wraps into kind of discrimination and explaining how that character felt throughout it. And unlike Harry Potter, which kind of develops this entire world for you to enter, I really like how the author took the magical world and it became part of our world. So it's kind of just like an unveiling that magic is all around us and we just don't see it. And her brother goes missing, she gets introduced to this magical, supernatural world. She becomes an agent for that, and she has to go through training to be an agent. She's really trying to discover what happened to her older brother. But throughout this, she's also learning acceptance of herself. And it goes through the many forms of discrimination she faces in different situations. And I think it's a really powerful message, and I really like the overall arcing theme to it. I love the character development in it, and I think it's done really well, and it was really interesting. It's kind of like more of a mystery trying to solve things, but bringing in supernatural things. It was a really good book, and we enjoyed discussing it at our book club, so I would recommend that. There are, I believe, 3 books in this series. I read the first one. So the next one would be Heartstopper, and again, I don't have a physical book for that, but this was for the reading young adult as well for the library book club, and it was really good. We chose to read the first 2 books, and they are graphic novels, so they're really quick to read. I mean, you can read it probably in 45 minutes, a whole book. But it was a really good choice, and this was our choice for February, to kind of go with the overall arching theme of love for Valentine's Day and things like that. But it was a really sweet story. It's about 2 characters, 2 males in high school who kind of are discovering themselves. One is already openly out and gay, and the other one is kind of discovering his own sexual identification. And it's just a very sweet coming of age, first love story. And I think it does have some really good examples in it of really healthy relationships, but also really toxic relationships or negative things that can happen in relationships. And I fully anticipate having my almost 11-year-old read it when she's a little older, because I don't mind her seeing men or boys kissing or having a relationship. That's not the issue I have. The issue I have with it is some of the language is kind of adult, and sometimes I don't think she's quite ready for that type of language used in bullying, especially towards the LGBTQ community. So I want her to be a little older before I introduce that. But like I said, I think it gives a great example of what a healthy relationship can look like and what a toxic traits in a relationship can look like. But it's a very sweet story. And I am currently I've read book 1, book 2, book 3. I'm waiting for book 4 because somebody else has it checked out at the library right now, and then I'll read book 5. But it's interesting enough that I want to continue the story. I want to know what happens. And I know it has become a Netflix show, but I don't have Netflix, so I haven't watched that aspect of it. But I really do enjoy the story and the real raw emotion it talks about. Because I think, especially for me, I haven't dated for, I've been married for, let's do the math, 14 years, and I've been with my husband since I was 19. So, and we were together a while before we got married. So it's been such a long time since I remember what it was like to date, and that like teenage drama-filled life, that it was really good to take me back to that point and remember those feelings and emotions, especially since my daughter is hitting the teenage years in a couple years here. It was a nice reminder of the happiness and joy of first relationships, but the emotional turmoil that sometimes comes with them. So I would highly recommend those books. I really enjoy them. The next one was our read aloud that we did, and it was the corner of bitter and sweet, and we were learning in history about the Japanese internment, and this was the book recommended, and it was really, really good. It's about Henry, and he's growing up in the 40s and 50s, and it switches perspective from him growing up as a boy. So I think like 11, 12, 13, it does span over a couple years. And then it switches to him as an adult, more elder, well, in his 50s or 60s, I would say, and his wife has passed away, and his interactions with his son. So it kind of gives you both perspectives, which I really like, because some books can, when they jar back and forth, it can be kind of hard to follow along, but I think it did a wonderful job with that. And it showed, he lived in Seattle, and it was talking about his experiences with that, because he was Chinese, and there was a girl that he met who was Japanese, and kind of his experience as someone who was Chinese, seeing what was happening to the Japanese people and having this really important relationship with this girl. So again, it's one of those like almost first relationships, coming of age stories about that internal struggle of how he identifies, and the fight of his own culture, and is he Chinese, is he American, is he Chinese American. And really, I think it does a really good job describing the overall discrimination that was around during this time. And of course, I'm aware of it. I took history, but I think this book really dives into the feelings around it. And I think it was, and both my almost 11-year-old and 7-year-old listened to the book, and there's nothing I would be like, oh, that's not appropriate. I think it was done really well. And it's funny because when we reached the end of the book, I was really sad with the ending of the book, and my kids were completely fine with it. So that was an interesting take. But I think it really did describe that time period well, especially from, again, I like to pull from perspective of the people that are being discriminated against, not just somebody else's interpretation of it. So I think it was a really good book. I recommend it. The audiobook was awesome. I think it really did a good job kind of narrating the voices, probably better than I would have done in my own head. But yeah, I enjoyed it. And to go along with that, I checked out They Called Us Enemy by George Takei. And it's a graphic novel, and it's his experience in one of those Japanese internment camps. You can see it's black and white. And again, I had myself and then I had my oldest read this to kind of really fill in the gaps, because you do in the Corner of Bitter and Sweet book get a little glimpse into what the camps were like, but it's mostly from Henry's perspective, seeing what was happening, not really seeing what's happening in the camps. This is George Takei's account of his life in one of those camps, and I think it was really important that we talk about that perspective in the story as well, and really dig deep into it. I think it does really capture the struggle, the hardship, the discrimination. So I would definitely recommend that book if you're talking about that specific period in history. I think this would be a great resource to add in. And my daughter enjoyed that book as well. Next one is one we read for our church book club, and it was called Flash, the Homeless Donkey, and it's about a woman's story about finding her faith or rediscovering her faith And this donkey comes into their lives when things are really hard, and they choose to care for the donkey and kind of what the donkey teaches them. It's a very, again, sweet story, a very chicken noodle soup for the mother's soul type of book. It doesn't go really deep into religious beliefs. It kind of just skims the top, which I was okay with because I'm kind of picky when it comes to the religious things I read. I don't like a lot of fluff and, the Hallmark moment type things. Now this one was cute. I think it does hit on a lot of things, especially women deal with insecurity, just as a parent, as a mother, getting older. She talks about some very vulnerable things in her life, but she really brings it back to how these things have impacted and shaped the person she's meant to be. So it's a cute read. It's not deep in any means, but I thought it was interesting and I enjoyed it. Next one would be Letters to My Transgender Daughter by Carolyn Hayes. So this was recommended to me by one of the members of PFLAG because I'm always looking for resources, especially with Pride Month coming up in June. I always try to educate myself more on the LGBTQ plus community, and she recommended this one, and it was really, really good. So it's not necessarily letters, but it's the author's writing to her transgender daughter and kind of her experience as the parent going through this transition. And from a very young age, her child knew that they identified differently than their assigned gender at birth, and how they navigate that in a very loving way, but also a very difficult way. And they talk about there's an event that changes, kind of shifts everything, where their child is potentially taken away from them because they allow their child to be who they want to be, who they identify with, and the legal system with that. And what I really like about the book is it talks a lot about history within it and science, and it delves into, transgender is not something new, it's something that has always been around, and she really goes into the scientific parts of it, and just little parts of it. It's not like super big chapters, a really long history, but she, I think, drops it in the right parts of her narrative and story to really understand. Because what I really like, and I really, I guess, relate to this parent, is when she's traveling down this road, she's very much looks into research and learning more, because that's the kind of parent I am. When I encounter something I don't know or something new, I research, I learn as much as I can about it, so I have a better understanding of it. And that's exactly what this parent did. And even if you don't have children in the LGBTQ plus community, it's still a really good book for parents, and the importance of acceptance and love of our children. And it was a great, great book. I highly recommend this one. And then the last one was actually someone recommended for me, and I thank you very much. I've really enjoyed this book. This is Brainstorm, The Power and Purpose of the Teenage Brain. So this was recommended when I put up my 5th grade struggles, and just talking about how my daughter's becoming a preteen, and we're just, we're getting some different struggles and changes with that. And this book was great. I highly recommend it if you're entering those preteen years or those teenage years, because I think this is really, really helpful resource. I really like how, again, they go through kind of the science of the brain and development, but it's talking about, which I really like, kind of framing adolescence, those teen years, in a positive way, that yes, this dramatic change is happening, but looking at their brain, things are happening that are going to kind of set their brain in motion into adulthood. And that can be scary, yes, because you're talking about risk-taking behaviors and different things like that. But if you can harness this age and really develop that brain, you can carry it into adulthood. Because what I really liked and I found meaningful was the author talked about how as adults, we kind of lose that risk-taking behavior. And the theory is because, our prefrontal cortex is fully developed and we can now see the consequences of the choices we make. But really, we lose a part of that because it's not nurtured. It's not part that we keep going. That ability to risk-take, to try new things, to keep learning. That learning is something that doesn't stop after 24 when your brain's developed fully. It's something that continues on, and that a lot of adults lose that part. And I think it's true. And I really liked it for both looking at my children, you know, as they come into their teen years, but also as myself and kind of where my brain development is. And am I still a risk taker? Am I willing to do the things that my adolescent brain at one point would do? So I really do like the positive framing of that, of this. I feel like the teen years, puberty, all that is really seen as a really, difficult emotional time, which it can be, but it's also a really amazing opportunity of growth. So I really did enjoy that there's different practice sessions or different practice, as you can see, it has mindset tool, mindset practice. So there's situations where you can practice some of the things. I don't like books that just kind of tell you this is the way it is, but don't give you an idea of how you can implement that in your life. I liked that there was that. And then in the end, there's this entire mindset tool, the Simple 7, which it talks about 7 activities you can do on a daily basis that are scientifically proven to keep your body healthy, your mind strong, and your brain continuing to grow throughout your life. So I really like that because, again, I can implement that with my children, but also with myself, making sure I'm hitting those areas as well. So I found it great as a parenting resource, but also as just a person. I felt like it was really good information. I do kind of like the little doodles throughout. I feel like the little cute visual stick people was helpful to me. But I guess, learning how to keep that like inner child, a part of you that develops alive into adulthood is really important. So I highly recommend this book, and thank you for the person who recommended this book to me. I did thoroughly enjoy it. So those are the books I have read for January and a little bit the first 2 weeks of February. Again, if you have any suggestions for me, link them down below. I do prefer to read nonfiction. I'm not a big fiction reader. As you can see here, most of them lean towards nonfiction, but I do occasionally dabble in them. So if there's something you really like, I will definitely check it out. Leave it in the comments below. If not, thank you for watching.